All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Still discussing the video, his name was Arthur Leigh Allen, associated with the Zodiac Killer mystery. I mean, some people refer to this as a documentary, but really it's like, a series of interviews put together. Very simple presentation. So, as I mentioned in part one, it's like we don't really do film reviews on this channel, but I thought it would be kind of nice to just discuss some of the points that they were making in this thing. It received about 500,000 views on YouTube, and it was always in my suggested feed. The reason why I didn't watch it sooner is because um, I was trying to stay away from Arthur Leigh Allen. I wanted to explore some things with some other suspects. And that's one of the points that they really make in this video is just that when you're dealing with true crime, you have to kind of follow the evidence first, as opposed to following the suspects first. And I do confess that maybe I've done kind of a little bit too much of the latter, following the suspects, as opposed to following, like where's the evidence bringing you? And I think that really happens to not only me, maybe other people like Tom Voigt and other people like Goldcatcher, or just anyone who's following the Zodiac mystery, because so many of us want to kind of look at the suspect and then you just want to say, what about this person? And then you want to keep kind of nailing evidence on a particular person, and that can kind of lead you to tunnel vision, or what it can really lead you to is forcing a theory. But is that what's going on with the case of Arthur Leigh Allen? Are people just forcing the theory too much? They brought up some very interesting things, and I would really like to pay attention to the comments from the criminal profiler Sharon Hagan, Hagan. I hope I pronouncing her name correctly. They just kind of put it on, the subtitle tagline at the bottom of the screen. Now, she made some things that we talked about in part one, but what I think about her insight is that it was kind of like the strongest, kind of boldest statement that we could have in the entire video. And when she's saying that the Zodiac Killer would eliminate Cheri Jo Bates, the Zodiac Killer would eliminate Kathleen Johns, she says that even Arthur Leigh Allen, just in general, why are you eliminating all these things? Because the Zodiac was not sadistic. And I was like, that's kind of an odd thing to hear. She said the Zodiac was not sadistic. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Well, the Zodiac did not really ravage the victims in a constructive way. I mean, sometimes people are murdered and stabbed to death. We talked about the case of Elliot Rodger before, where he stabbed his roommate 91 times. That stuff didn't exactly happen with the Zodiac. She was like, the Zodiac killed people very quickly and then, of course, got away. Elusive. And that's like something that was going on with the Zodiac, trying to evade capture. Whereas you look at something like the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, and that was a very brutal crime. I remember when I did my Cheri Jo Bates upload, and I was just like, even reading some of the details about the case, I was like, oh, this is just gruesome. And we do a lot of true crime on this channel, but I was like, some gruesome things about that. She was stabbed multiple times. She was slashed across the face. She put up a violent struggle, able to rip the perpetrator's watch to pieces, and they have the actual wristband from the watch still in evidence. So, very, very gruesome and sadistic event. So, that's one of the things that I hadn't really thought about exactly, but that is not really in line with some of the other things associated with the Zodiac, where it's much more associated with killing someone very quickly and then trying to evade capture. I still thought it was kind of a peculiar statement all the same to say that the Zodiac was not sadistic. But Sharon Hagan followed this up by saying that Arthur Leigh Allen was a sadistic individual. He was a sadist. He liked, projecting that type of destruction onto people. Well, what do we make of that? What I can say is they introduced this video. His name was Arthur Leigh Allen, which, you can see for yourself here on YouTube. They introduce it by saying in 1958, he's like threatening somebody with a knife and stuff like that. And Arthur Lee Allen does seem like someone who's impulsive. He seems like someone who is aggressive. And, he also kind of has that Zodiac confession. But there, what a couple people in the video are trying to say is that Arthur Lee Allen's psychological profile does not fall in line with that of the Zodiac. The DNA did not match Arthur Lee Allen. The side palm print and the fingerprints did not match Arthur Lee Allen. So the forensic evidence isn't supporting the case. And they're actually trying to say is that, personality wise, Arthur Lee Allen doesn't match up with that of the Zodiac Killer as well. Something still bothers me about the statement, though, that the Zodiac was not sadistic. I mean, we can definitely say that the Zodiac Killer was involved with things like mind games. He was definitely involved with psychological taunting. I mean, that's how they often introduce the Zodiac in these things, like on, the television specials. They're like, he terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area in the late 1960s. That's what they would always say. I mean, I heard that line multiple times from things like America's Most Wanted or perhaps the History Channel when they would do those specials. I mean, that's kind of a different type of terrorizing that they are talking about. I mean, and I think that's kind of what the point that Sharon Hagan was trying to make, where she's like, maybe the Zodiac was associated more with psychological taunting as opposed to, like ravaging victims and, stabbing them multiple times, really getting off on the physical abuse as opposed to the psychological abuse. So we definitely can sort of look at Arthur Lee Allen, and they kind of portrayed him in this particular video as some sort of kind of rage filled individual. And we do see that in some of our other suspects, like Lawrence Kane, for example, having some problems with impulse control. Um, Ross Sullivan would be a little bit different. He would be somebody who would kind of just had some psychological issues, and he starts to fit the narrative more and more. But once again, I mean, if we're going to talk about evidence as opposed to just personalities, Richard Gaikowski is somebody whom, he could really kind of go either way. He definitely doesn't. I didn't know Richard Gaikowski personally, but he seems like someone who would definitely be all about the kind of psychological taunting and mind games. He seemed like someone who had a certain sense of intelligence, but wouldn't have necessarily had those sadistic tendencies that they were talking about in this video. His name was Arthur Lee Allen. A lot of people are trying to get away from Richard Gaikowski, though, and they think that a lot of the things are exactly what this video talked about. They've taken a person, and then they're just trying to force all of the Zodiac evidence onto this person. And I confess to, I am somewhat guilty of that as well. But it is kind of through these discussions that we learn a little bit more. A lot of people probably wanted Arthur Lee Allen to be the Zodiac Killer, but the thing is, it's like we just don't have that kind of smoking gun piece of evidence or something. His confession of of being the Zodiac is not what I recall. In this video, they say that he confessed to being the Zodiac by just saying, I am Zodiac. Not I am the Zodiac, but I am Zodiac, and was saying that he can make people disappear. It's the concept of you commit a series of murders, and there's really only one target. There's really only one person that they're trying to go after. But they kind of blended in with a series of other murders to throw off the police. I've seen that storyline on a variety of crime shows throughout, the course of life, and that's not unheard of. What I remember hearing about when I was much younger, like when I was first introduced to this stuff, I was only a kid watching TV. I think it was America's Most Wanted when they did a special on the Zodiac Killer. Maybe it was a different program. I mean, it's been, well over a decade, maybe 20 years ago since I saw that thing on television, but I thought it was Arthur Lee Allen confessed to being the Zodiac Killer to the owner of a nightclub when he said that, I want to be your enforcer. And he's like, I don't know who you are. Why should I hire you? And then he said, well, those Zodiac Killer murders? That's me. I'm the one doing it. I can do anything you want. I have no limits. Something of that nature. But they sort of said that his confession took place in a different way. Well, we mentioned this in part one of the upload that other people have confessed. A confession by itself, I mean, not necessarily enough. Also, somebody brought up something on the comments in one of my videos. Yeah, someone brought up like something about the murder of Paul Stine when they were like, a real piece of definitive evidence would be if they somehow find, Paul Stine's wallet and Paul Stine's like bloody shirt fragments in somebody's house. Like if they had found that stuff in Arthur Leigh Allen's house, that would be the kind of evidence that would completely cement his guilt. And you'd be like, all right, he has Paul Stine's wallet and Paul Stine's bloody shirt. 99.6% chance he's the Zodiac Killer. And then, of course, the conspiracy theorists on the internet would be like, no, 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 that was planted. Some other person put that there. It was actually some other Joe Schmo from North Dakota who was on vacation in San Francisco who did it. In a previous upload on the channel, we did mention that new suspects come up in the Zodiac Killer mystery every single week. That is one of the kind of disadvantages of the internet. One of the advantages is we can talk very freely about this, and we've been able to mention an enormous amount of suspects and things associated with the Zodiac. But at the same time, some people are also putting out things that are somewhat far out theories. It's fine if we discuss a far out theory. The worst comes to worst is that, like we're going to discuss it and be like, well, maybe, but not quite. That's kind of like what the most of what happened on a channel like this. But one of the things that like I just really came away from this video was that Arthur Leigh Allen might not actually match that much of the Zodiac's criminal profile, like the psychological state of the Zodiac. Whereas that someone who is kind of doing these less aggressive types of murders. And we mentioned in part one another comment from Sharon Hagan when she said that the Zodiac would have most likely been a well, children, people younger than the adult age. So, and I mean, the first victims were teenagers on their first date. And the first four victims, were they were only in, their early 20s. I mean, we've mentioned multiple times that Paul Stine as well was only 29 years old, and he was the oldest of the five confirmed Zodiac victims. But I do have to agree with Sharon Hagan when she says that Cheri Jo Bates, was savagely torn apart. I mean, she was, excuse me, sir, she was stabbed multiple times, slashed across the face. That was a gruesome killing. That's maybe not exactly in line with some of the other things that we've talked about. But what I can say is that it doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible. Who's to say that a person like the Zodiac would have to commit every single murder in the exact same way? And the Zodiac didn't do it. I mean, like, he didn't do everything exactly the same in the kind of confirmed Zodiac activity. I mean, look at the Paul Stine killing versus Lake Berryessa and Lake Herman Road, and it's like, those things are drastically different. I mean, you're not targeting a lover's lane or anything like that in the Paul Stine murder. You're targeting a taxi driver who's by himself, mind you. He's not with a woman. It's not like some type of vengeful, jealous lover thing, which is a narrative that a lot of people tried to create. Whether it's the Louis Myers theory, whether it's something like the kind of stuff we talked about with Richard Gaikowski, where he could have been stalking women, it would be nothing like that. He killed Paul Stine, who was by himself, who was a taxi driver, not in some far out little lover's lane corner in a taxi cab. Not all of the Zodiac activity is completely consistent. It's not like he was targeting only blonde haired, blue eyed women who were 5 feet 1 inch tall. Not exactly. So maybe it's too much of an extreme statement to say that someone would have to commit all the murders in the same way. But at the same time, I do kind of put a little bit of faith in that. I put a little bit of faith in the kind of statement that they might be looking for a very aggressive, sadistic murderer in Cheri Jo Bates, as well as, or to the rather than the Zodiac, who was kind of a little bit more evasive, someone who was kind of killing people much more quickly. I mean, I think that they've raised a very interesting point. I would say, though, that it's not 100% certain. And that's all I can really say about that. I mean, kind of like, I hear what you're saying, but there's always that possibility that maybe those things actually are connected. Well, I think we can explore the murder of Cheri Jo Bates a little bit more, but I think that there could be, and like we could kind of examine some other suspects. Really, the only suspect that I've personally talked about on this channel has been Ross Sullivan, and they do raise a very interesting point about just if you're going to use the Arthur Leigh Allen theory, then that would eliminate Cheri Jo Bates, other than the fact credit for it. It's like a very interesting setup that they have created. They're really trying to limit the amount of Zodiac activity, only attribute the confirmed killings to Arthur Leigh Allen, and kind of stay away from some of the kind of fringe outlying theories that the Zodiac Killer was involved with 37 other murders. Well, what do you make of these sort of 37 killings? Do you think that any of those are genuine? Or is this just what they're kind of talking about in the video, that the Zodiac wanted to take credit for other murders, that the Zodiac wanted to just kind of taunt the police, or that the Zodiac is also putting out false information to intentionally throw off the police, to dissuade, also to just kind of brag about stuff? Because that's kind of the George Russell Tucker theory that we talked about, which is one of my most recent suspect that we were covering on this channel. In the George Russell Tucker theory, it's just that a man found out his wife was having an affair, so he retaliated by becoming the Zodiac Killer. And that in the book about this, the Zodiac Killer cover up, which is the name of the book about George Russell Tucker, they talk about how he just wanted to restore his ego. He wanted to kind of feel stronger, and in short, he just kind of lost it mentally. But once again, that theory also, as far as I know, eliminates Cheri Jo Bates, trying to say that the Zodiac Killer would have fit probably more of the profiled image that they're talking about in this video. His name was Arthur Leigh Allen. Well, was Arthur Leigh Allen the Zodiac Killer? I say that the points in this kind of little upload here that we've done on this channel are kind of really dissuading us from trying to think that Arthur Leigh Allen was involved. Bear in mind that we would be dealing with multiple people in the Arthur Leigh Allen case. No matter which way you spin it, it seems like there's some other sort of accomplice involved. If you're going to try and say that Arthur Leigh Allen is the Zodiac Killer, that's going to be involving at least somebody else is kind of working as an accomplice, whether they're writing the letters, whether they are also helping taunt the police. Maybe they're making phone calls. This is the Zodiac speaking, or something like that. If you're going to be entertaining the Arthur Leigh Allen theory, then it's very likely that there was someone involved. Maybe Don Chaney, maybe someone else. Also, we just need to recognize we covered a wide range of suspects on this channel, and in the future, I mean, it's just something that I'm also going to try and be aware of when we're going to be discussing any true crime case, about not trying to force things too much. And this is why I just have to have this open call once again. If you have anything to say at all about any of the cases on this channel, if you have anything to say at all about Arthur Leigh Allen as a suspect in the Zodiac Killer mystery, please drop some comments below. I really can't do it without you guys, without your excellent comments, because if you just sort of keep rethinking the theory over and over again, so you get the tunnel vision. And sometimes you guys leave some comments, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that before? Yes, yes, of course. But I don't get there unless I have, the kind of support from the other people who are listening to this stuff on YouTube. So you can hit the like button if you like. You can subscribe if you want to ever hear any more uploads about the Zodiac Killer or any other true crime mystery. If you want to list a possible topic in the comments section, you can go ahead and do that. But most importantly, let's have some more discussions. I would also say one final note about Arthur Leigh Allen. When we did the upload on Bruce Davis on this channel, we mentioned that there was a poll on a website that was done fairly recently that listed Arthur Leigh Allen as the prime suspect. The users for the poll, I think it was like 42% was the highest, going to Arthur Arthur Leigh Allen. The court of public opinion is leaning a little bit toward Arthur Leigh Allen. For a while, a lot of it was going toward Richard Gaikowski, but some new evidence kind of came up about him. Overall, though, what do you think about that? Are people's instincts kind of on, or do you think that the general public is just useless and completely far off, and you can't make anything out of that? I've had numerous comments on this channel that have talked about Arthur Leigh Allen being the Zodiac Killer, and we mentioned a comment in the first part of this where they just sort of said, even though the forensic evidence doesn't seem to support it, I still have the gut feeling that it's Arthur Leigh Allen or that he is involved. And I'll just kind of leave it at that. What do you think about that? Once again, if you have anything to say at all about Arthur Leigh Allen and the Zodiac Killer, please drop a comment